Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Hey sports fans, are you ready for an exhilarating gaming experience? Introducing VIPclub.lv, your ultimate online sportsbook and casino. VIPclub.lv offers a vast selection of sports, from football and basketball to tennis and baseball. Bet on your favorite teams and enjoy the thrill of the game. But that's not all. Our state-of-the-art online casino offers a dazzling array of games, including slots, blackjack, roulette, and live dealer tables. Win big with their fantastic promotions, rewards, and exclusive offers. Join VIPclub.lv today and get a generous 200% match welcome bonus to start your winning streak. And make sure to use code ECSI at sign-up. Bet it, win it, and cash it at VIPclub.lv. Visit VIPclub.lv now and play responsibly. VIPclub.lv, your sportsbook and casino extravaganza. Must be 21 or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Visit gambleware.org for help.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Midday Market Report for Wednesday, July 19, 2023. 2 weeks from now will be August. We'll be talking Hall of Fame game. It's great to be back. Shout out to our new sponsor, VIPclub.lv. Always, always, always use ECSI at the checkout window. Tell them JD sent you, and they'll take good care of you. Today we get back in the saddle. I'm high above courtside, well, I guess turf side, Gillette Stadium, where Premier Lacrosse takes place. The expert, the guru, good friend and colleague, Mr. Dan Alexander, back. We're going to break down first half in lacrosse, what he expects in the second half. Give you a little sprinkle, maybe with a potential future or maybe an outright, maybe to grab with some good value, and close with a little Philly special. What would it be without Dan and talking some Eagle talk? 1 quarter away from the Super Bowl champs. They're locked and loaded. On paper, they're the team to beat in the NFC for sure. Really excited to hear what he has to offer, what's going down in Philly town. And we'll get it all. So without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Dan Alexander.
Jeff, you had to bring up the Super Bowl loss, that we were just a quarter away. I would argue we were a botched call away from winning that championship. So, yeah, it's still that James Bradbury holding call looms large in my mind. So it's good to have the PLL as a little palate cleanser before the season kicks off. But, yeah, I've been doing some preview videos for the NFL with the Gold Sheet TV. So I'm locked and loaded. I'm all ready to go for football, but we still have half of the Premier Lacrosse League season to continue to cash tickets on, Jeff. So, I'm not turning the page quite yet to football season, but definitely already taking a look at maybe some look ahead spots for the Birds. So, excited to be back though, man. It's great being back alongside you.
Well, we sure miss you. We life gets busy, as you and I both know, and we were talking, months ago about the playoffs and the Eagles and the Super Bowl. You and I then connect via chat, yada yada yada, and we're getting ready for the Premier Lacrosse. And then you move across the country, wager talk. I mean, your life is so busy. We're blessed and honored to have you back, and any time is better than no time, Dan.
I'm right there with you, man. And that's what's great. We know we're halfway through the season, so while we haven't got a chance to really chat much out of here and there, still plenty of money-making opportunities. And also, you could argue now that we have, a good 5 weeks of who these teams are versus what their preseason expectations were, starting to have a little bit more handle on as far as, on a game by game basis and more of like a macro view of, who's the top dogs and who's the teams who have a lot of work to do, digging themselves out of some holes here in the latter part of the season. So it's been great though, man. We've seen, viewing increase, with them being on ESPN, being on ABC at times. So no, the rocket ship continues. And the only part that makes me sad about that is the odds makers only getting a little bit sharper on their line making as more data starts to come into fold here in year 5 of the league.
And that was the funny part with our first couple of years of shows, getting ahead of the game, literally talking about a game and watching it on DraftKings, watching the numbers move. And now, as you said, there are ESPN, ESPN2, ABC, wherever they are on TV. People are excited. And with your phone being a sports book or a casino, you can play anything at any time. And you talked about them getting sharper. How much harder has that been for you compared to the first couple of years?
I think it's just, it's definitely, you don't see as many WTF lines, as the wrong team favored lines that we saw so many times, where we would see teams that are, 2.5 point favorites that should be underdogs in some cases. You don't see them, messing up the start times on games anymore, where maybe they leave a lineup a little too long and we have, some really good money making opportunity. You even just look at the difference between the regularity of seeing 2.5 point underdogs, because we talked about, what an incredible trend it was whenever you were getting 2.5 goals or more. I think the amount that we have seen it since 2021, since we started doing shows together, since we started tracking lines, we've only seen the 2.5 spread 17 times. The teams getting that 2.5 are what, 12 wins. So that would be 12-5. Out of those 17, though, Jeff, only 3 2.5s that we've seen this season. All of them came in week 1. So the 2.5, being a blind spot to bet, has become a thing of the past. However, something that does continue, we talked even take the 2.5 out of it and just playing underdogs against the spread in the PLL. The season long and year over year always said, hey, taking 1.5 is a really good bet, or taking points when you get them is a really good bet. That hasn't changed this season. Well, maybe it's narrowed a hair. You're looking at underdogs. We have 20 games of data through the 5 weeks of the season that we had. They play 4 games a weekend, and underdogs against the spread are 13-7. So that's 65% against the spread for underdogs. And that's something that has continued, because if you go back to 2021, it's only a tick higher. It's 65.74 for the underdogs against the spread. And that's with, what would it be, about 108 games in total. So that would be 71-37 for underdogs against the spread in the PLL since I've been tracking lines with my team and Bet on Lacrosse, Brian Andrews, and Pro Lacrosse Talk. So while it's a hair smaller, that's 65%, still a great mark if you're just, taking underdogs blindly against the spread.
If you go, we're at the halfway point, and if I told you, I'm looking at the standings right now on Premier Lacrosse League, go over there and follow along. Archers, Water Dogs, both 4-1. Cannons, Chaos, and Redwoods at 3-2. Whip Snakes, Atlas, Chrome, 1-4. If I asked you which team stands out as something you didn't expect, and vice versa, who was supposed to be good that is like, what's happening, boys?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it was something that you and I talked about with our PLL preview show, that I didn't really understand the hype around Atlas Lacrosse Club. They were the odds-on favorite heading into the season. Everyone was riding this Atlas hype train. However, we pointed out there's a new head coach of the Atlas this season. There's a changing of the guard there, and I think a lot of the hype around this team coming into the season was that championship series that we talked about back in February. It was a different style of lacrosse. It was indoor. It was sixes style. So I think a lot of the excitement was around a sport that was completely different than what we see here in the summer. So I wasn't as high on the Atlas hype train as maybe some were. And they've dropped all the way from, I think before the season, they were like plus 320 to win the title. They're down to plus 750 here on FanDuel Sportsbook. So they're dropping down in the rankings. And the thing is it doesn't look good, Jeff. Like, not only are they like losing games, like some of them, okay, have been heartbreakers. They get blown out by a Cannons team that the Cannons had the longest odd before the season. So when you talk about the team that's over exceeding expectations, their win total was lined at 3.5. They're already at 3 wins. So they're going to be cashing that over 3.5 for bettors. It was plus money as well. So the market expectation on the Cannons where they were going to be bad, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Lyle Thompson wasn't going to be playing. We talked a lot about him and what a terrific player he is, but heading into the season, I was talking about how ball dominant that he is and how maybe a team that likes to move the ball around a little bit, and now they lead the PLL in passes and assisted goals. Maybe having a guy who isn't so ball dominant as their guy would be a major boon for them. And that's what we've seen. Their odds are all the way up. They were plus 1,200 before the season started, probably even better at some shots. They're now 6-1. So they're moving up. Atlas is moving on down. So I guess those would be the two big shockers for me. And then I also think, you look at a Whipsnakes team who's 1-4. That's a bit head scratching too. Whipsnakes, the only 2-time champion that the league has ever seen, and they're all the way at plus 750 with their odds. So I think those would be my 3 big surprises. Other than that, things have kind of broken how I kind of saw them. Redwoods being that inconsistent team that we know all about. Chaos, winning games, covering games. That's what we know from them. So as far as shockers, the shocker is Atlas Lacrosse Club. And not only have they been bad, Jeff, they haven't covered a spread yet this season. They're the only team in the league that hasn't covered a spread. So, you and I look at spreads and odds as what the expectations are. Not only is this team not meeting expectations, I mean, they're missing the mark by an exponential rate.
A week off, all-star break. They kick back into action next week, I think in Dallas, if I read correctly. What is your thought looking at the standings here? A race to make the playoffs, if I remember correct, 3, 6, 7 teams make the playoffs, or is it right?
Yep. 7 teams are going to make the playoffs. So 1 is going to be the odd man out. So that's the way that it shakes out. The top seed ends up getting a bye in that case.
So Archers and Water Dogs with a 1-game lead over Cannons, Chaos, and Redwoods. And then obviously Whipsnakes, Atlas, and Chrome will be fighting for that last spot. Up top, what is your thoughts with the two teams at 4-1 and the Cannons, Chaos, Redwoods at 3-2? If you had Biff's almanac and we were talking getting ready for the playoffs, who would you expect to be the team on top at the end of this regular season wise?
Yeah, I think regular season wise, the Archers are in the driver's seat here. Not only with that 4-1 mark that you pull up there, but you also just look at their scoring differential. They're 13 in the scoring differential, and when you look at what the tiebreakers are, that is the tiebreaker. It's scoring differential. If they have the exact same, then it's going to be their head-to-head matchups throughout the season. I also think I think this Cannons team isn't just a flash in the pan. I'm looking at that 3-2 record, but you look at their scoring differential, it's actually better than the Water Dogs, who are ranked right above them. So I think this Cannons team, who have also scored the most goals in the league at 71, they're not going away anytime soon. So I would even look at them. The nice thing about the odds makers getting sharper is they're also offering some more exotic bets that you can end up getting down on. So you're able to actually bet a team to receive a top 3 playoff seed. So you're just trying to get your team to land in the top 3. You look at the Archers, you look at the Water Dogs. Archers are minus 550 on FanDuel. Water Dogs minus 410. Redwoods are minus 125. I think that's where you're seeing your misprice. That number should be the Cannons at that minus 125. So while I'm not going to pull money out of my pocket and get down on a future that's only plus 105 on the Cannons, Cannons to receive a top 3 playoff seed, if that is how you like playing your futures, I think that's a worthy look indeed. But it's just, for the way that I bet, Jeff, why would I bet a plus 105 future and tie my money up for the next 5 weeks if I could just find the spots where I like Cannons to win outright on the money line, only paying, minus 110, or maybe they're an underdog. They've been underdogs, in several different games this season. I'll even pull up a query and see what their record is against the spread here. Because I think you're going to see them as favorites a lot, but maybe when they play a team like the Archers, maybe they're getting 1.5. But let's see, they are 4-1 against the number. 3 of those covers came as underdogs. 1 of them came as a favorite. So, maybe I would rather just find a spot where I get, plus 110 on the Cannons, and I already make more money than a plus 105 on the future. But I think they are definitely live to make some noise come playoff time. So even if you want to sprinkle a little bit on them, you lost some value at 6-1 to win the title. I like seeing them in that playoff talk. I don't think that they're just a flash in the pan. I don't think there is a regression coming. I think this team's only going to get better as the year goes on. So I'm very bullish on the Cannons for sure.
But Vegas has given you the wink, wink, thinking the Redwoods is that third team, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that has a lot more to do with history more than anything, right? I think that, they're looking at this Redwoods team, and I also think it's why they've been a nice team to fade as things have been going and unrolling after this season, is because they are so inconsistent. They are a 1 step forward, 2 step back kind of team, and they're the only team, for what it's worth, while the market's saying wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they might be a top 3 seed. Why is it that they're the only team who hasn't been favored in a game yet? So that's also something that I look at. Sure, you like looking at the futures for a macro view, but in a sport like this, I feel like the odds makers are focusing much more on something that's going to drive more handle, which is the week by week basis. So I think you're really seeing more what they think about the Redwoods, the fact that they haven't been favored in the game yet. And not only have they not been favored, they're only 3-2 against the number. And we talked about how good it is being an underdog. That's definitely, not a 65% cover rate for them. That's only 60% on the spreads that they're covering. So, I think it's a little bit more of a stale market. I don't know how much handles being driven in the top 3. So I think that's a number that they just threw up, and they're just going by the standings, the Redwoods, this is a team who went toe to toe with some of these other top flight teams. So maybe it's, I don't get that minus 125 on the Redwoods. If there was a yes, no on them to make the playoffs or miss the playoffs, I'd probably lean more towards the no if we didn't have 7 teams getting in here. So I think maybe it's a little bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but I think more so it's a situation of a market that the odds makers, it's just an afterthought is really, how much hand are they really driving in something like that.
And you talked about goal differential. I mean, you said, Cannons plus 10, Redwoods minus 7. So they're
exactly
alone. There's a 17 differential between the two as it is.
Exactly. So that's what I mean is let's say things do break right for the Redwoods, and, they go on a nice little run here and they end up with the same wins as the Cannons. They end up with the same amount of wins as the Chaos. So all the teams that they are currently tied with, both of those teams have better scoring differentials. And not only better scoring differentials, you look at the Chaos, they're 13 better in that mark, as Redwoods are sitting minus 7. Chaos, while they're not going to blow many people out, they play tight games. Still, you have to make up 13 points of ground if you end up tied with one of those teams. So you're not going to catch the Archers probably. You're not going to catch the Water Dogs. So I'm looking at those 3 teams. Do I think the Redwoods finish on top of either of them? I don't. I think the scoring differential would end up hurting them in that case. I will say I hope the Redwoods get 2 more wins, because I have a Redwoods over 4.5 season win total ticket in my pocket, which thank God they won in week 1, or I think that thing would already be toast.
Whipsnakes, Atlas, Chrome, all 1-4. Whipsnakes only -1 in goal differential. Atlas -12 and Chrome -14. Which one of these, with your crystal ball, does not make the playoffs?
See, here's the thing, though, is not making the playoffs this year might not be the worst thing in the world, because coming out of Duke is Brennan O'Neill, and this dude is a generational player, likely going to be the de facto first overall pick in next year's PLL draft. So while some people might look at it as who's going to end up on the bottom, you could also look at it as be in the race for Brennan O'Neill. So as far as the team that probably needs him the most, I think the Whipsnakes would love having a player like that. They have a little bit more of an aging roster, so they would love to add a piece like that. All of them would love having Brennan O'Neill. If I have to decide who's going to miss the playoffs, from what I've seen, Jeff, it's the preseason favorite. It's Atlas Lacrosse Club. I mean, part of what hurts this team is they've changed the rules for how the faceoff goes. So after you win a faceoff, you now only have 32 seconds of a shot clock. So what teams are doing, Water Dogs, you look at them, they're 4-1. Cannons, they're 3-2. They're not even like dressing a faceoff guy. And they're basically punting on every faceoff, allowing the other team to win it, and then just going in this insane press, forcing turnovers, and then really hamstringing the ability to play make it, take it for a team like the Atlas, who has the best faceoff guy in Trevor Baptiste. He was the MVP last year, but just this change of rules negated what was their best thing. And then you have the sky falling with a new head coach who he's trying to get these guys to buy in. They're not seeing the success that they typically see. They're 12 goals under. They're having some problems in cage. They're trying to rotate through Drake Porter, switch back between Kincannon. So there just isn't a steady hand anywhere on this roster, which is why I'm shocked to be saying it halfway through the season. But if I had to pick who's going to miss the playoffs from what we've seen through 5 weeks, it would be Atlas Lacrosse Club for me.
All right. Next week, you will be on your last vacation, obviously, and then we'll have the last 4 weeks with you leading up to the playoffs on Thursday or Friday. We'll obviously figure that out. A lot of people want the Philly special. They want to know what's been going on in the offseason. Is it as easy as, what is it, like minus 125, 150 for Philly to win the division? Is it as easy as taking them NFC champs, sprinkling a little something on them to win the Super Bowl? Jalen Hurts, MVP. How's the offseason been so far, and what are you hearing?
I think they've had a terrific offseason. Don't get me wrong. I think, they've done a lot of bolstering their roster. Sure, you lose Miles Sanders, you lose Shane Steichen, you lose Jonathan Gannon as far as both of your coordinators being gone. But with Jonathan Gannon, I don't think that's much of a loss. I like bringing in Sean Desai from the Seahawks. So I think that's a fine, steady hand on the defense. And as far as the offense goes, sure, you're going to miss Shane Steichen, but you're promoting from within. Their new offensive coordinator is Brian Johnson. And you could argue that he's one of the biggest reasons why Jalen Hurts made the year 2 leap. He was the quarterback coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. So you're still going to have that familiarity, maybe even ratchet it up to a new degree. And let's be real, Nick Sirianni is the guy who's calling the plays. So does losing Shane Steichen really make the sky fall on an offense that returns basically the entire offensive line front? They talked Kelsey into coming back for another year. He wouldn't be coming back if he didn't think this team could be around and in the mix. You bring back A.J. Brown, you bring back Devontae Smith, and then sure, you lose Miles Sanders, but you could argue they got better in the backfield. I mean, who has a lead back anymore and doesn't do a running back by committee? Now the Eagles committee has DeAndre Swift. It has Boston Scott. It has Rashad Penny, who leads the league in yards after contact, which is a crazy stat that blew my mind, that Rashad Penny is the guy who's fighting through contact. So I think they only got better offensively. The worry for me is I think the Cowboys got a little bit better as well. And if you just look at the NFC East, the last time we had repeat champions was in 2003 and 2004 when the Philadelphia Eagles did it. So every single year in the NFC East, it's a new team who rises to the top. Eagles have a tougher schedule. So detractors of the Birds last year, whose main thing they said was, they played a cupcake schedule. You can't say that anymore. The Eagles have the strongest strength of schedule heading into the NFL year. They have to play the Bills. They have to play the Chiefs. They have a murderer's row right there in the middle of the season that makes me worried. So while I'm excited for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jeff, I wouldn't be betting any over-season win totals. I think there is going to be a little bit of Super Bowl hangover. You just look at teams that lose in the Super Bowl, the struggles that they have the next year. I don't think it's prolific enough that they drop off the playoff race. But, I think the only bet that I would make to win the NFC East, I'm not laying minus 125 before the season. I would look towards the Cowboys in that aspect. because I think, even with the Eagles, with everything that broke right their way last season, Dallas was still in play towards the end of the year to win the division. So the Eagles aren't winning, 14 games next year, and they still had to sweat out the division. So I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm looking forward to it, but it's with bated breath because in Philadelphia, expectations don't really do kindly to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's nice when we're the underdog. It's nice when we're under the radar. But when there's expectations, that's when I start getting a little bit agitated as a Philadelphia Eagles fan. So cautiously optimistic, I guess, would be the theme for me on the Birds.
You covered so much there. And also I'm going to add Kenneth Gainwell. You guys could run the wishbone with
it tells you how good their backfield
Gainwell
is that I forgot Kenneth Gainwell, who was a huge part in their Super Bowl run.
And I'm drafting him on every spot in my fantasy teams this year. Love him. Listen, I'm a Swift guy. I've had him in diapers. I loved him in college. The problem is he does get dinged up. You brought in a Rashard Penny, which is just another guy that gets often injured. But, hey, if Swift is injured and Penny steps up and then Penny gets injured, you got Gainwell and Scott there that have been there for a few years now to add the veteran leadership. So that's number one. Number two, where I want to go with this is I agree with you. I like Dallas at plus 175. You talked about the repeat. You talked about being the hunter versus the hunted. You got a huge bullseye on your back. I want to say you had the perfect storm last year, even with Jalen getting hurt. You still had the perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could grab the price on Dallas. Maybe they get out early because I want to go right here. You open up right here in Foxborough against a Patriots team, which is not a lot of high expectations, to be honest with you. The number opened at 3.5. Public's all in. It's as high as 5.5. I know we got a lot of time to break this down, but don't you just smell a little upset here?
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm right there with you. And also, the NFC East is always ripe for upsets. So I'm right there with you, man. I think when you try and just eat the chalk before the season, let's tie it back to the PLL. How about all the people who are eating the chalk with Atlas heading on into the year? They're not doing too well. I never like preseason hype because until you lace up the shoes, and also for what it's worth, I never like negative preseason as well. It's the same thing that to loop back to the PLL, what we saw with the Cannons. Everyone was down on him. I was here with the bell saying, what are you guys talking about? This roster might be better without Lyle Thompson. And they definitely got better in the coaching department. They got better in offseason acquisitions. So I'm right there with you. I think the main thing that I'm excited for is, do we finally have a season of Hard Knocks that we're all going to watch? The fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to be on Hard Knocks, I don't know if I've ever been excited since the Rex Ryan days for an edition of NFL Hard Knocks. So I always fall off after the first 2 or 3 weeks. So now that Rodgers is going to be on it, just that dynamic and having Sauce Gardner, a lot of personalities. I don't know. I think that's the underdog ticket that I'm hoping to cash is finally I watch an entire season of Hard Knocks because that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about.
Dan, the scroll has been going the whole time. There is a bazillion spots to find all your work. Instead of me reading them all out, because all the watching, listening, all the retweets going on right now, they know where to find you. I want it to come from you. Tell them everywhere to find all your work.
Yeah, nice and easy. Easiest way is right below me. Or wait, it's over here. Right below me. And that's Newbie Talks, NEUBY, TALKS. You can also follow at Bet on Lacrosse. Me and my team with Brian Andrews, Hutton Jackson, Brandon Biaggi. We do a great job getting you actionable info. We are all up money. None of us have had a losing week in the PLL yet across 4 different guys. That's not too bad. So you can follow us at Bet on Lacrosse and then also follow the PLL Bet social. On Twitter, it's at PLL Bet. On Instagram, it's at PLL Bets. Somebody snatched up that domain name before we could add that S on Twitter. So we're not paying them for it. We refuse. We're sticking with that PLL Bet. So that's where you can follow along with all of my stuff. Of course, check out Wager Talk as well. And I love it, Jeff. It's good to be back in the saddle, brother.
I can't thank you enough. Shout out to Ben Cohen at USC. He'll be going back in less than a month.
You the man, Ben.
Ben doing his
He can come
thing.
visit me out here. We're both SoCal boys now. So there you go.
Ben, make sure you follow Newbie and connect with him. Maybe he'll have a couple tickets for you for a little USC, UCLA or something. So go follow Dan at Newbie Talks and at Wager Talk, Premier Lacrosse, Bet on Lacrosse, Cash Consideration Show, Sports Memo, yada, yada, yada. Go follow me at EC Sports Invest, 4:30. Myself and Riley Magnuson will be back for the closing bell. And at 6 o'clock, Brady Cannon breaking down the Open, the British Open, the last major in golf. So from everyone here at ECSI, much, much thanks. Dan, enjoy your week off next week. We're going to catch you all in August for the last 4 weeks in the playoffs. Everyone, stay tuned.